بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
Okay, so the next thing we'll move on with the DMVPN Phase 1 with OSPF. So in the previous, we have seen how we can, what are the commands we need to enable for NHRP routing. Like we have disabled the split horizon rule on the hub router. So I'm going to implement the Phase 1 with OSPF. Let's say if you are using OSPF. So I'm going to remove the EHRP, what I have configured in my previous lab. So let me just quickly remove the EHRP and reconfigure the same DMVPN Phase 1 with OSPF. So I need to remove the EHRP 100. Likewise. Okay. So I removed the EHRP. So the prerequisite, as we did already the Phase 1 implementation, so we do have DMVPN Phase 1 already pre-configured. So just to confirm that, you can see the tunnel configuration is already there. So we are using multipoint GRE on the router 1 and GRE on the spokes. And also you'll see there is a dynamic command enabled. So we already have a multicast dynamic command. Now multicast dynamic command is required if you want to allow the hello messages to be exchanged. This is common for both the protocols EHRP or OSPF. So we are going to keep this command because we still need that command for allowing the OSPF hello messages as well. Apart from that, the rest of the things are same. So if you see the tunnel configuration, so here as well, these are all tunnel configurations, and we are allowing the multicast hellos should be sent only to 15001 because we just form neighborship with this. So there is no need for multicast to be sent to other peers in general. So this is to allow the multicast hellos. So if this is configured, basically you expect the neighborship should form. So let's go and configure the OSPF here. Again, the same thing, we need to advertise the 10 dot network, which is something we are using on my tunnel interface, and advertising the LAN interface. So in my LAN, I'm using 1 dot network here. So let me copy paste these commands. So configuration wise, this remains the same. The only thing is the LAN interface will change. So on the router 3, I'm using 3 dot network, and on the router 4, I'm using 4 dot network. Okay, done. So once we do this configuration, the problem here is I should see the neighborship. That's what I'm expecting on the router 1, but you see there is a lot of messages over there. The neighborship goes from X again goes to down. It's like the neighborship is not actually coming to full stage. Now this is one thing you need to understand with OSPF. Problem is, so with OSPF, by default the OSPF is going to treat any tunnel interface as a point-to-point interface. So if you go and check the command with show IP OSPF tunnel interface, you see the tunnel interface is going to be point-to-point. So which means on the router 1 we are using multipoint GRE, and it is expected to establish a neighborship with all the 3 neighbors, not with one single neighbor. So basically that is the reason you see these console messages basically coming, where it goes from initialize to down or exchange to down. It doesn't end, it doesn't go to full stage. Okay, so that's the problem. That's the reason you will see a lot of console messages on the routers saying the neighborship is established, and then it goes down again. So here we are using point-to-point. Obviously we are using point-to-point here. That's not a problem. But here we are not using point-to-point. We are using multi-point. So which means we need to change the network type. So in order to fix this, in OSPF, if you're using OSPF with DMVPN Phase 1, we need to fix this. We need to change the network type to point-to-multipoint. So we have to change this network to point-to-multipoint. So which means I need to get into tunnel interface and then say that this network is not point-to-point, which OSPF treats by default. It's point-to-multipoint. So which means we are going to change the tunnel type to point-to-multipoint here. But again, we also need to change on other side as well, because basically in OSPF, in order for neighborship to form, the network type has to match. So you cannot run point to multipoint here and point to point here and then expect the OSPF to form the neighbors. That is not possible. So basically the network type has to match on all the sides for OSPF neighborship to come up. Okay, so that's the reason we need to go and change the network type on all the routers. Same like, in NHRP we have to change the split horizon rule for the spoke to spoke exchange of the routes. So here for the neighborship to form we need to change the network type. So which means now I need to go and change the network type for my OSPF to work. So let's go into the tunnel interface and then say IP OSPF network point to multipoint. Okay, so the same thing, I'm going to tunnel interface IP OSPF network. So we got different network types. So basically here point to multipoint is something what we will be using. Okay, so let me copy this line. The same thing, we need to go to router 3 and change the network type as well as on the router 4 as well. So now we should see the neighborship is stable and you can see it goes from loading to full. So now the first thing we'll try to verify the neighborship. So you can see the neighborship is full, and the next thing we'll try to verify the routes. If you see show IP route OSPF, so I'm expecting the routes. You can see 2 dot, 3 dot and 4 dot routes are coming. And if you try to check show IP OSPF interface tunnel 0, so default it was point to point. So now we have changed this to multi-point. And if you go and check on the router 2, now the router 2 will be establishing neighborship with only router 1 because we have only a normal tunnel here, the point to point tunnel. And if you verify the routes, if I say show IP route OSPF, we can see the routes are coming. So again the split horizon rule doesn't apply for this link state protocols, that is specific to distance vector protocols. So basically now you can see the routes are coming and it's coming from router 1. So let's confirm the reachability as well. So let me just try to ping to the LAN interfaces of each and every router. So I do have reachability again. Okay. So basically you need to understand the behavior of the protocols in terms of phase 1 or phase 2. In terms of phase 1, like if you're using OSPF, then what are the changes you have to do? Like we need to make sure that we change the network type to point to multi-point for the OSPF to work.